Come Monday, most of the nation will take the day off, as it has now for 1¼ centuries. But in Arkansas and the nation, how much does organized labor have to celebrate? The supersonic shift to a knowledge-based high-tech economy, how much does it imperil the union structure that remains? Indeed, how large a role can labor hope to play in the Arkansas and American future? Arkansas Week, coming up.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week. Picnics on Monday, of course, but the path ahead for organized labor in Arkansas and the nation is no picnic. Collective bargaining helped create the American middle class in Arkansas, or parts thereof. It provided better wages and working conditions for generations, confronted almost always by business, political, even cultural opposition. But here, as elsewhere, union membership in the private sector is shrinking. With the 125th Labor Day only hours away, labor in Arkansas is our focus. Joining us for the half hour, Colleen Youngdahl, a third-generation Youngdahl practicing labor law in Arkansas. Alan Hughes is president of the AFL-CIO in Arkansas. Jessica Akers Hughes, no relation to Alan directly anyway, is secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO. And John L. Burnett, for almost 4 decades, has practiced labor law in our state. John, I perceive anyway that you are the senior or the most seasoned, perhaps should I say, among the 5 of us at the table. When we were discussing the program a couple of days ago and the state of labor, you chose the term dispiriting. You want to stick with that?
Steve, I do. It is dispiriting, but you know, political trends and other trends come and go. It's not a good time politically, culturally for labor, but organized labor is part of the fabric of who we are in this country, and they're not going anywhere.
Alan Hughes.
I'd like to comment that last piece was great because we've been fighting this for years. We're the first state that had a right to work. You've seen it go up north. You've seen states fight it. Missouri got it turned down last year. And to have us be the leader of that, it's nothing that we want to see and we're not proud of it, because you're actually working for less, is what we call it. You don't see locals or unions deserts in Arkansas. You're seeing it because of plant closures. If we're losing membership, it's not because they're filing for deserts. It's because the plants are closing and moving to other countries.
Jobs are disappearing.
That's it. And you're going to see, I'm watching, I think you're going to see a lot more females involved, the jobs, where they're going, the type of jobs. You know, a lot of these jobs that the unions organized was, if it's paper mills or whatever, the hard working jobs. And it's hard for women to compete in some of those because it's not easy work. It's always nice to know the ones that make it, they're drawing the same salaries that the men do. So organized labor's got a lot to offer, and I don't think we're not through here. They've tried it time after time. They try it during every session. And our construction side, here it is. We've got a great shortage right now in skills, and they need them left and right. And labor's the one that started apprenticeship programs. So if they would work with labor instead of fighting us, they'll realize there's a lot of benefits to it. Because in Cooper Tire in Texarkana, the plant that we've come close to losing twice, the reason they kept it there and shut them down in other states is because of the quality of work, safety guidelines and all that, and the workers in that plant, they take pride in what they do. I've heard a silly saying, oh, that's just those union guys, they just want to break the company. Who in the world would want to break a company that's furnishing a living for your family? So we're not going to go away. And I appreciate what you said.
Yeah. Jessica Hughes, from a woman's angle, aspect of labor.
Right. You know, I don't think we're going to go away. I think despite kind of the disparaging, outlook that was presented, right, of declining membership and things of that nature. I think we are at a crossroads where union membership could possibly blow up. There's over 50% approval rating of unions by most workers in all the polling I've seen. And, we've got the PRO Act that has been introduced that would look to modernize the environment of which people can organize. I think we're moving towards a more communal society again, and I don't say communal in that way, but with social media and things, people look for community, and they know that together they can make some differences, whether it be at work or in their community.
Colleen Youngdahl.
One thing I'm always been very inspired by with organized labor is their training and education. And today, a lot of people are crippled with student loan debt. But unions provide apprenticeship programs and training for people from right out of high school up to any age, workers that have been, working for decades, and they can work and learn at the same time, collect a wage, and leave with skills and certifications and without debt. And that is going to be huge for Arkansas in the coming decades.
Well, back to John Burnett for just a second. The battles at labor fight, nobody expects labor to go away, I don't think, realistically, even in its present, I don't want to say atrophied either, but in its diminished state owing to a number of factors. Most of the battles that labor fights these days, and perhaps it was always so, really are not on the factory floor, but on the floors of the General Assembly and the legislature and in courtrooms.
Well, Steve, that is true, but to say, well, confidently, it's ridiculous to talk about unions going away. I mean, American industry has never bought in or truly accepted industrial democracy in this country. And if they could repeal all union legislation, they'd do it in a heartbeat. So yes, unions do fight in the legislature and in the courtroom constantly, but the fight still is on the floor as well. And there's a lot of different types of workplaces now that unions need to get into and are getting into, besides the old image of the factory floor. There's a lot of other places at stake that unions have to win over the hearts and the minds of the workers.
Well, in fact, some of those factory floors are police stations, classrooms.
Yeah, no question that the big growth has come in the last couple of decades in government employee unions, and there have been enormous efforts on the part of state and local governments to crack down on government unions and to try to weaken them, and some successfully.
In fact, Ellen, anyone, correct me if I'm wrong, but the latest numbers I was able to find indicate that about 2/3 of organized workers today are government employees rather than private sector employees.
With the internationals that service those, yeah, you're right there. With ASME, Arkansas County Municipal Employees, Workers United, I mean, nowadays, even the industrial side unions, we reach out, we've got stewardess in our union, airlines and stuff. I guess some would say survival. You just keep growing your membership because it takes a lot to have the force that we need. I'm anxious to see, just like the prisons. If prison, there's a lot of talk about prisons going private. I'm anxious to see what's going to happen in those prisons when they do go private. Will they start going more union? Because I worry about our prisons being under control of someone else. But the ones that we know of, like American Federal Government Employees, and some, they've already controlled unions in those environments. I think we'll see more.
Colleen Youngdahl.
One thing I think you really need to focus on is a lot of things that unions bring to the table that might not have to do exactly with membership. For instance, the minimum wage in Arkansas, the Fight for 15, I think was an important movement because it brought the stories of low-wage Arkansans to people that hadn't heard them before, and we started talking about it again. And so although those fast food workers and minimum wage workers weren't able to unionize, they were able to start a discussion that led to real change, and we do have a higher minimum wage because of it. So unions and organized labor are bringing tangible, wonderful aspects into people's lives that help them take care of their family. And I think that's a step to getting to more membership, because it is about helping people put food on the table for their families. That really is an important facet that 125 years ago was important, and we're still thinking about it today.
Yeah.
Mayor, I've been fortunate to be in this position for 24 years and be at that state capitol fighting these battles, and they're not any easier now than they used to be. And it seemed like every time it come time for a minimum wage increase or a tip credit, the AFL-CIO and its membership's in the lead of that. We don't gain members off of it. We're helping the others try to raise their standard of living. So it's not just about unions, it's about all workers. We just happen to have that title, and that's what we work under. And it's a feel-good, I guess, to know that they could call and ask us, are y'all gonna be able to push this for us? Will y'all help us? And we're always glad to, because it affects every one of us in a family way. If it's your nieces, nephews, or someone is touched by that minimum wage, which is so far behind now, it's unreal.
And it can't, Joe.
We have to remember, unions brought us the weekend, brought us the 8-hour day, brought us workers' compensation, and unions need to do a better job at continuing to fight for the common good in a way that can translate into membership and organization. And it's difficult in this country to do that.
Well, and particularly in Arkansas and other states, which are, and labor, of course, is weakest in the South. But where so many states, not just in the South, but especially in the South, they're right-to-work states. And for as long as I've been in this trade, labor has argued that employees who do not contribute benefit through union membership, benefit nonetheless. They don't pay their fair share of the lobbying efforts.
We have to represent them just as we do the dues paying members in our contracts. We have to represent them the same rights that we work under, because some of those things that happen could come back and hurt someone else that is a union member. So it's a right to work state.
The term you use is a little off. It's the right to shirk.
I was just going to say that right to work gives us our own challenges within the workplace. But I think the biggest thing to look at in a right to work state, I believe, if you look at it with the opportunistic and positive outlook, is that perhaps we turn that into an organizing tool. Right? In a right-to-work state, you're an at-will employee. You can be fired without procedure and cause, and there's no grievance procedure. Whereas if you have a contract, you know that a female and male are getting paid the same, that you have a process, that you won't be fired if your boss just doesn't like you, and it gives them that voice at the table, the seat at the table, and to me, I think we should use it as such to get contracts in a right-to-work state.
Striker replacement, employee-free choice. People ought to be able to decide on their own whether or not they can join a union. And when you see a union campaign kick off, because we get calls, we send a rep to them to talk to them, tell them what's about. Next thing you know, you see a law firm hired. They call them union busters. They're brought into the plant, and then the people in the plants are held under, they say their own company time. Captured, they have to attend this meeting to hear this anti-union stuff. But they never will invite that union in here to counter or let the workers have them come in. That's the reason that employee-free choice is so important that we're trying to get through, because intimidation.
Well, I think all four of us really try to empower workers to feel like they can speak to each other, create this democratic process to stand up for themselves. And that really is our job, to say that we are stronger together. And we hope you come along with us, but we want you to be able to work hard and make a good living and contribute to Arkansas as a community. Because if you're making a good living and you're taking care of your family, you're going to go to Travelers games, go to Razorback games, go to Labor Day picnics. But if you're, you don't have good health insurance, you don't have good benefits, you are constantly worried, and you're not going to be able to contribute to our whole community the way you would, otherwise.
Absolutely.
John Burnett mentioned a second ago, John, I'd like to go back to you, that there are so many aspects of contemporary working life that are taken almost for granted now. Workers' comp, 8-hour day, OSHA protections. And yet there still remains in much of the South, and particularly in Arkansas, a deeply entrenched, it goes beyond the political and the corporate, I mean, there's a cultural bias against organized labor. Ponder that for a second. How do you deal with that?
If I knew the answer to that, gosh, I would be a famous guy. There is a cultural bias. You know, there is a frontier independent spirit. And you get back to the old song, oh, why can't people see their own best interests the way I can? There's no good answer to it that I know. I would tell you, though, that as in so many aspects of life, in America, we believe in and value education. Kids don't grow up in Arkansas learning anything about unions. There's parts of the country where education about unions is a standard part of a curriculum. We don't have anything here. By the time a young man or a young woman gets to be 22 years old and out in the world, they don't know anything about unions unless they came in a union family. And that's part of it, at least. That's part of it, but I think we've all been up against the strong cultural bias that we have here. But it's not insurmountable. When we did have more factories here in Arkansas, Arkansas was one of the more unionized southern states. So it's not insurmountable.
Bye-bye bauxite.
Bye-bye bauxite, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, just look at El Dorado, the GP plant down there. 650 jobs they're losing. I never have to this day heard why they're shutting that part down and moving it out. They were lost 750 just a few years before that with the plywood plant. But those people in that plant that had a union, they had a benefit package to go out on and everything. I mean, they had a choice about insurance. They had a service package of years of work and all to help carry them. Nowadays, you only get 16 weeks of unemployment. Imagine being down across Arkansas, 650 jobs, and you just went through one big deal and you're trying to locate another job. You think you're going to find a job in 16 weeks? And they just keep cutting those benefits back. We used to have 26 weeks. So you see the hardship it's laying on the town and all too. And when we get calls about a union, Steve, most of the time it's not about money. It's about the way they're being treated or safety violations or problems inside that plant that are dangerous. Yes, money, once you get a union there, money and other things fall into it because they will get into negotiations at a later time. But a lot of times it's simply about the way the worker's treated, unsafe, the conditions. That's where it all starts.
John Burnett and Ms. Youngdahl, you've handled some of those cases, I suspect.
Certainly. We had a couple workers that were fired during the Fight for 15 strikes, and were able to get them back wages and kind of be their backstop when they did fight for their rights, you know. But one thing that you had mentioned about the youth, and I think you were mentioning the Gallup poll that just came out that said there's 64% approval rating, which is a 50-year high for unions right now. It said the younger the respondent, the more likely they were to approve. And so I have a lot of hope for our future, and I think that one great thing that unions are doing too is they're helping in all ways. So for instance, the carpenters have been helping with disaster relief a lot. And there is a huge gap in aid to the working poor with these hurricanes and the flooding that's coming in. And the carpenters started a fund and have been given money to members whose homes have flooded. And it's been a great way to make sure that people can stay in their jobs after these hurricanes and that our whole economy isn't upended because these families are left homeless. And you know, FEMA insurance, a lot of people don't have insurance, or you know, FEMA isn't really, you know, able to support them the way they need.
It's a common argument. You hear it in the legislative halls, you hear it at City Hall on a labor, sometimes, maybe even often, goes too far in its wage demands, in its demand for benefits. And it is an economic stumbling block to an economic expansion rather than a partner in it. Alan Hughes.
I've heard exactly. I've been in negotiations with the plant that I worked in, and you hear that all the time. And we ask them, open your books up, show us. We can show you savings, cover it if it did. I mean, you got to be honest with one another, sit down and be able to negotiate. What scares me in the future is this part-time work. And it's scary now. They say we're creating jobs. Well, you find out somebody's working 4 hours here, they're having to get up and work 4 hours over here. It's not the same location. They're keeping on 40 hours a week, and then they turn around and they fall over on the state programs. And who's picking up that burden? That's us, the other citizens out there. We're having to foot the bill for that company because they won't hire them 8 hours. They don't want to be responsible for the taxes or the insurance and stuff like that. That's going to be labor's biggest battle to me in the future. It won't be technology. It's going to be, what are we going to do about all this part-time work? Because a lot of them, they're contracted out. You can't contract and get a subcontractor.
Jessica Hughes.
The original question was?
Well, I mean, Alan Hughes just brought up in his words, the biggest challenge is going to be the efforts to circumvent, basically, full-time contract work.
Okay. You know, Alan and I are two, we think individually, and we see things differently, I think, because of our backgrounds and our ages, where you know, sometimes he's in the harsh reality of the industrial jobs that are leaving and have left in those communities. And labor, I think, as a whole, you know, we've got to market ourselves better. I say, there's a huge approval rating. We're at full employment, you know, pretty much nationally, especially here in Arkansas. That puts workers in demand. That puts, you know, that swings things in favor, I think, of unions and labor. But Arkansas specifically, we've got to not use the economic development message of we have cheap labor, right? You hear that coming out of the economic development houses here in Arkansas, is that we're cheap labor.
Well, it's invariably advertised as a right-to-work state.
Right.
Steve, back to your original question, it's just so much hokum. I mean, let's look at the basic bottom line. Income inequality in this country, it is at historically disparate levels. The bottom line is that the share of corporate profits, the share of corporate income that's going to wages is going like this, and the share that's going to profits is going like this. So I'm not receptive to the notion that the working man and woman wants a bigger share of the pie.
Well, you wouldn't object to it either. I mean,
well, I mean, it's all but scandalous to think that in this country we have gotten to the point we have with the income inequality that we see. And so no, labor is not seeking too many benefits or too much wages.
what is the path forward? We've kind of touched on this earlier in the broadcast, but what's the path forward? You've got robots now that do the work 24/7, that an entire, well, 3 shifts. You have the outsourcing of jobs, which Alan Hughes mentioned. Jobs that are simply lost to technology. More and more people working at home because they can or because they choose to.
I think you bring everyone into the fold, but also who's going to repair those robots? You know, they're going to break, and you need skilled labor. And that's, again, one thing unions do for their members and for people that, you know, want to get into the trade is teach them new skills. They are evolving with the economy. You know, they're not still teaching the same thing they were 40 years ago, 10 years ago, even 1 year ago. When something new comes out, a new robot or a new machine comes out, somebody has to learn how to fix that. And, you know, Labor Day really shows you that we are on the backs of all the laborers before us, and we still are, because, you know, without union education, you know, the factories that we count on in Arkansas, you know, wouldn't be able to operate.
Alan Hughes.
I mentioned earlier where we're going, and I'm sitting here thinking about nurses. We're not getting any younger. The United States is growing in population. the age. I mean, look at Arkansas. We could call it a retired state. Retirees come to Arkansas, it's cheaper living. At the same time, you're going to have nurses. And I'm not talking about a few. We've had shortages. We're right there at that shortage still, just like we are in construction side on apprenticeships. We've got to do something instead of waiting for it to happen and have that shortage. We've got to come up with ways to work together and come up to where us head this off. Let's solve these problems before we get there. We spend too much darn time fighting each other. If we realize that we all got a piece of this pie and we all should have an equal share, not equal share, a fair share,
Yes.
we can make Arkansas one of the top states.
John Burnett, let me go to you. We've got about a half a minute remaining.
Well, you know, the auto exec that points to the robot while he's walking the factory floor with the union guy said, how are you going to get that guy to pay union dues? The answer to which is, how are you going to get that robot to buy a car? So, yeah, it is a tough time with the outsourcing of labor to other countries, and so it will be. But organized labor is what brought us to where we are as far as the working man and the working woman. And it's up to labor to work harder in the future to recapture the members that they should have.
And we have to leave it there simply because our time has expired. Thanks to all of you for being a part of the program. As you know, ATN has launched Arkansas Citizens Access Network, ARCAN, an online website that gives every Arkansan a front row seat to state government boards and commissions, as well as other proceedings. They're streamed live and archived for 30 days for later viewing, so stay tuned to see what is coming up. And we thank you very much for joining us, and hope you enjoy your Labor Day. See you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.